Dish deep, Moors don't sleep. Invest in your mind and body and unleash. Real life rap, spitting over tracks. Conscious thinking and living a dead attack. Dish deep, Moors don't sleep. Invest in your mind and body and unleash. Real life rap, spitting over tracks.
Prepare to come home and join this team and join this reconstruction effort. Your country needs you.
She says her country also needs to find its own national identity, that after all those years of dependence on the U.S., it may be time to be less Americo and more Liberian.
Because over our history, we always felt we had this patron out there, you know, this big brother that if we ever ran into trouble, all we had to do was to cry, and Uncle Sam, our father, would come and save us. And
Uncle Sam with the same red, white, and blue, with a similar flag?
Those are some of the symbols that we also think will need to be changed. We'll have to find something that takes us back to a history before the settlers came. Our flag, our seal, all reflect really the dominance of the settler group. To get full unity, we have to deal with those historical symbols that have led to the division.
All people who are part of this case, from the federal to the state, has been given a package right from my consulate post, and it states in detail, you know, who I am, when I am, why I am, and how I am protected by the Vienna Convention, and how they should have never taken me into custody. I should have never undergone all this scrutiny. I should have never undergone all this torture. My doctor has Dr. William Thompson. He has written an affidavit verifying that he had informed each institution that I'm not just a regular inmate, right, but I'm also a consul general, or I'm a diplomat, and I should be able to get medical attention. I should have contact made with my consulate. They never called my consulate. They never gave me the number, even though I told them over and over again that I'm a diplomat. They never made any contact with the Liberian consulate and give me any leads where they just would just close the door and say, yeah. And you go down here in this middle district, Georgia, dealing with a very small mind mentality of races, and they are very intimidated by any black person with any intelligence, so they actually shut off when they see that you're somebody. A small mind mentality of races, and they are very intimidated by any black person with any intelligence, so they actually shut off when they see that you're somebody. A small mind mentality of races, and they are very intimidated by any black person with any intelligence, so they actually shut off when they see that you're somebody.
You can't do something out black, that means you're dead. Legally. I'm a black minority. I'm a person that's a black minority. Either way you go, you're locking yourself into some stuff you don't need to be in. You gotta learn how to disassociate yourself from the words that you've grown accustomed to using to identify yourself.
Much misinformation and inaccuracy in the broadcasting on the diplomatic status of Dr. Malachi Z. York. It is important for us to correct these inaccuracies because they are misleading people and creating an atmosphere on an unsubstantiated foundation. We deal with reality and not theory. For many of those who rarely want to pass judgment on Dr. Malachi Z. York truly knows the detail of his diplomatic status. So we are here to assist you in knowing the facts by showing you the proof. For many people are easily influenced by propaganda, purposely promoted to breed a biased point of view. Let us now begin with Dr. York's Certificate of Citizenship, followed by his appointment letter signed by then President Charles Taylor in 1999.
As you can see, Dr. York was already a citizen of Liberia prior to his illegal incarceration on May 8, 2002. And then he was appointed Consul General of the Republic of Liberia by the then President, Charles Taylor.
The Liberian national anthem may not sound familiar, but the history and heritage of this tiny country, 3.5 million people on the coast of West Africa, indelibly link it to the United States. While indigenous Africans have thrived here for centuries, While indigenous Africans have thrived here for centuries, Liberia, it means land of freedom, was also settled in the early 1800s by freed American slaves. They were bankrolled by some unlikely partners: abolitionists eager to give African Americans their own nation, Southern slave owners fearful of rebellion, and Christian missionaries keen to spread the gospel. This is their Plymouth Rock. It's actually called Providence Island, where the first group of settlers arrived nearly 200 years ago on their own version of the Mayflower. But while they crossed the ocean in the opposite direction, they never really left America behind. The newcomers transplanted everything from the flag, it looks just like ours, to the map. There's a county here called Maryland. The capital, Monrovia, is named for U.S. President James Monroe, and their first president, Joseph J. Roberts, was born in Virginia. The official language here is English and the standard of currency, the dollar. Liberians celebrate most everything American, including former U.S. President George W. Bush, who gave Liberia $2 billion in aid and debt relief. They even wrote him a song. Thank you for debt relief. Just was taking.
So most Liberians feel that America and Liberia have this link. And to a large extent, most Liberians even feel that Liberia is, in a sense, part of America. And sometimes people say we are the stepchild of America.
According to Article 29 of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, it clearly states, "The person of a diplomatic agent shall be inviolable. He shall not be liable to any form of arrest or detention. The receiving state shall treat him with due respect and shall take all appropriate steps to prevent any attack on his person, his freedom, and his dignity."
What do we mean by legal fiction? A legal fiction, or a person, or a legal person, or an entity is all the same for the word corporation.
This takes us to another point. There are certain misinformed individuals who will point out something as trivial as the date Dr. York's certificate of citizenship was notarized, which, as you can see, it was notarized in 2005. But the fact remained that Dr. York was naturalized in 1999.
18 years later, conditions are starting to improve, and the American government is preparing to send the Liberians home. But they don't want to go. Many of them have families, jobs, and homes, and are sending money to their relatives in Africa who are struggling as the country tries to rebuild.
A lot of stress, and people on the phone calling. Have you heard anything yet?
The Liberians who are here are desperate.
Pressure from well-known people with clout may be their only hope.
I hope we can think better.
Please take a stand to keep families.
State Representative Larry Womble has even sent a letter to President Obama imploring him to let the Liberians stay
before his illegal incarceration. The reason this document was notarized was to simply make it an authentic copy. A supporting document was filed by Counselor Edward K. Goldberg, Acting Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Republic of Liberia, to certify its authenticity.
Now, if you're wondering what happened to Dr. York's original copy, well, it was unlawfully seized during an unlawful intrusion of his premises that was unlawfully searched. And according to Article 22 of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, it clearly states, and I quote, "The premises of a diplomatic mission, such as an embassy, are inviolable and must not be entered by the host country except by permission of the head of the mission. Furthermore, the host country must protect the mission from intrusion or damages. The host country must never search the premises nor seize its documents or property. Article 30 extends this provision to the private residence of the diplomats."
It should already be clear that Dr. Malachi Z. York is not a U.S. citizen. Not when you say we're a nation of 5% or we're a nation of Islam. That's a religious nation that has nothing to do with setting up your government as Native Americans.
I repeat, he is not a U.S. citizen.
You follow what I'm saying? So when you go before Washington, that links into the international state. There's a government other than the government of this country, all right, where the League of Nations was set up. The League of Nations preceded the United Nations. And when the United Nations was set up, the League of Nations are countries that said, I just don't want to be a part of that. I'm not interested in trying to control everybody's mind. This is what the so-called New World Order is about, trying to get everybody in a state of, under one type of mentality. And we as Native Americans are not interested in your form of government. I respect your form of government for you, but it doesn't apply to me.
And the documented evidence that we've already presented proves that. But if you need more clarity, allow us to introduce to you the element of renunciation. According to the U.S. Code, Title 8, Chapter 12, Subchapter 3, Part 3, Subsection 1481, it clearly states,
a person who is a national of the United States. Because this is a legal fiction. What do we mean by legal fiction? A legal fiction, or a person, or a legal person, or an entity is all the same for the word corporation. Whether by birth or naturalization, shall lose his nationality by voluntarily performing any of the following acts with the intention of relinquishing United States nationality. By 1, being naturalized in a foreign state. 2, taking an oath or making a declaration to a foreign state. 3, serving in the armed forces of a foreign state. 4, accepting employment with a foreign government. Or 5, formally renouncing U.S. citizenship before a U.S. consular officer overseas.
Now that we are all educated in the elements of renunciation of one's U.S. citizenship, it should be clear, very clear, that Dr. York is not a U.S. citizen.
Many Northern whites saw abolition as inevitable and wished for a resolution for the soon-to-be millions of freed slaves that didn't result in competition with native-born whites, and thus the American Colonial Society, or ACS, was born. With the express purpose of repatriating North American blacks away from the United States. In 1816, the ACS received support from many different personalities from across the political and social spectrum. Some of these abolitionists and members of the American Colonial Society had their own personal vendettas for supporting and funding such projects, such as Henry Clay and other Southern Democrats, while others had truly altruistic motives, such as the highly religious Quakers, who saw the treatment of Native Americans and blacks as a moral abomination. After several failed expeditions to the coast of West Africa, the ACS settled on the windward coast due to its relatively close proximity to the United States when compared to other areas of Africa, its moderate climate, which is somewhat comparable to the southern U.S., and because no other European power had yet claimed the land. Other proposals on where to send free blacks and emancipated slaves saw the more convenient routes, such as the Caribbean island of Hispaniola or Central America, and although not much came from these, a small community of American blacks settled on the Samana Peninsula in the Dominican Republic and still exists to this day. After 1821, small numbers of free people of color and emancipated blacks arrived in the windward coast, which became Liberia, with the largest settlement becoming Monrovia, named after the U.S. President James Monroe, who had strongly supported the ACS. For the next few decades, Monrovia and other American settlements were de facto territories of the United States. For the next few decades, Monrovia and other American settlements were de facto territories of the United States. After 1821, small numbers of free people of color and emancipated blacks arrived in the windward coast, which became Liberia, with the largest settlement becoming Monrovia, named after the U.S. President James Monroe, who had strongly supported the ACS. For the next few decades, Monrovia and other American settlements were de facto territories of the United States, being a small, albeit important bastion of American values and culture, with the newly arrived American blacks being just as much strangers in this land as any white American was. They began to form their own political identity and ethnic consciousness based on individualism, civil liberties, and classical liberalism, although even among the American settlers, a class division emerged between the free people of color, who were mostly mulattoes with significant European ancestry, and the emancipated black American slaves, although both of these groups were collectively known as the Americo-Liberians.
We've already shown you his Liberian certificate of citizenship. We've already shown you his appointment letter from the ex-president of Liberia, Charles Taylor, which serves as proof that he performed the duties of an office in a foreign state. And what follows is Dr. Malachi Z. York's Declaration of Intention, done way back in 1997, which will serve as his oath of renunciation, for he declared allegiance to a foreign state.
Now here's a discrepancy. With all the evidence presented, the U.S. would stay steadfast in the belief that Dr. York is still a citizen of the United States.
So today I'm going to be talking about Liberia and the Back to Africa movement. So Liberia is located in West Africa, and it started when the American Society for Colonizing the Free People of Color started in the United States. So it was around the time of the Civil War, and this club was made up mostly of white people, and they freed some slaves, and they paid for the transportation of other slaves so that they could send a group of freed slaves to Liberia to start a colony. It was basically just an overseas branch of this society until it declared its independence in 1847 and became its own country.
When the evidence is clear that he is a national of Liberia, on July 21st, 2004, Judge Yusuf D. Kaba gave a court order requiring Liberia to repatriate Dr. York back to the Republic of Liberia.
18 years later, conditions are starting to improve, and the American government is preparing to send the Liberians home. But they don't want to go. Many of them have families, jobs, and homes, and are sending money to their relatives in Africa who are struggling as the country tries to rebuild.
A lot of stress, and people on the phone calling. Have you heard anything yet?
The Liberians who are here are desperate.
Pressure from well-known people with clout may be their only hope.
I hope we can think better.
Please take a stand to keep...
State Representative Larry Womble has even sent a letter to President Obama, imploring him to let the Liberians stay.
2 years later, in 2006, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Liberia made contact with the State Department of the United States of America, buying through its embassy near Monrovia.
This is their Plymouth Rock. It's actually called Providence Island, where the first group of settlers arrived nearly 200 years ago on their own version of the Mayflower. But while they crossed the ocean in the opposite direction, they never really left America behind. The newcomers transplanted everything from the flag, it looks just like ours, to the map. There's a county here called Maryland. The capital, Monrovia, is named for U.S. President James Monroe,
requesting the repatriation or deportation of Dr. Malachi Z. York to Liberia.
In 2007, the Embassy of the United States of America presented their response to the Ministries of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Liberia. The Department of State consulted their colleagues at the Bureau of Prison, or BOP, and together they decided that deportation of Dr. Malachi Z. York to Liberia was not possible. They based this decision on two things. One was his jury trial, in which he definitely was railroaded. We can see that. And the other was the claim that Dr. York is a citizen of the United States.
The newcomers transplanted everything from the flag, it looks just like ours, to the map. There's a county here called Maryland. The capital, Monrovia, is named for U.S. President James Monroe, and their first president, Joseph J. Roberts, was born in Virginia.
But let's be real, people. How is it even possible for us little people to have all of these documents that prove that Dr. York is a Liberian by naturalization?
A naturalized American from India has now been stripped of his citizenship. All of this is part of the government's initiative to clamp down on fraudulent immigration. The individual has now been identified as Baljinder Singh from New Jersey. Singh became a naturalized citizen back in 2006 after marrying an American. The U.S. Justice Department has said that Singh arrived in the United States back in 1991 without travel documents or proof of his identity. This is the first denaturalization under Operation Janus, which is a long-running Department of Homeland Security's initiative against fraudulent immigration. On Monday, the U.S. government announced the end of a special protected status for about 200,000 Salvadorian immigrants.
How is it possible that the Liberian embassy themselves informed the United States Embassy about their national and it be met with deliberate disrespect?
First of all, you say you can't do this to me, I'm a person. A person is a corporation. This is exactly why they can do what they're doing to you. Because you're a corporation.
I opened this cafe 2 years and 4 months going 5 now. And since I opened the cafe, it's been a real struggle and to even get customers to come in. So I had this lady who would come to work for me. She isn't here anymore. And she's white. She's my friend, actually. And I said to her, I will stay in the background and you go into the kitchen and do, the serving. I will cook the food and just leave it with you. So I realized when she's in the cafe, she will sell a whole lot. But when I'm in the cafe, they don't come. In fact, they will look at, and as soon as they see me, they will turn around and walk away. Or sometimes they will open the door, walk in, take one look and say, oh, I think I'm in the wrong place. And they will turn around and get outside. Or when they want to be real cheeky, they will order something from me and tell me, oh, we'll be sat outside. And I will prepare the meal, and when I bring the meal out, they've left. So that particular day, I put that notice of, like maybe a week ago. We came to it was a market day. My daughter and I came to the cafe, and all day we made 22 pounds and 5 pence. So I was really frustrated. So I was almost in tears. So then she said, oh, mommy, cheer up, you got customers. So these ladies walk in, right? And she went to them, how are you, how can I help? They took one look at her up and down, turned around, looked at me, and they said, oh, we are in the wrong place. And they walked out, and I said to my daughter, okay, that's it. I'm going to put a notice on this board that I'm black. So before they open the door, they will know that it's a black woman there. They will see a black face. So they don't have to open the door and walk by. There's nothing on me. There's nothing strange about me, that makes them keep walking out. So yes, that's when I put it in. We just had a laugh about it. And 1 week later, it's all over the news.
Martha Renee, we've had a statement from Wakefield Council, who are responsible for the town centres in your area, and they've said we abhor racism in any form and believe that people should be able to make a living and run a business without interference. We have no reports of any similar issues in Ossett, which has a diverse and vibrant business community, and it saddens us that Martha Renee Kolle felt it necessary to take this action. We're supporting her in any way we can. Building Ossett Better, a community interest company to promote local businesses, is also supporting Martha Renee as they would any other Ossett business. I just want to ask you about that. Do you feel you're getting support from the community and from the council?
From the community, yes. I've had some wonderful people coming to support me. In fact, since yesterday, and I've got some real good friends here in Ossett as well. But as for the council, I haven't got a clue what they're talking about, because I haven't seen anyone from Wakefield Council coming to say anything to me about anything whatsoever.
Get in touch.
They might want to deny the issue.
They've invited you to get in touch. Do you think that would help?
Why should I be the one to get in touch? Why should I be the one to get in touch with them? Why can't they come to me? I mean, you would think they would want to know what's going on with me, because if they are so concerned, they would definitely like to know what's going on with me. But no one's been, they haven't said anything, and they are jumping to a conclusion that that's not the case, and we know it is the case. And the issue here is very sensitive, but we can't put it on the carpet. We have to discuss it in a very healthy manner. I don't want riot, I don't want confusion. I just want a nice, healthy discussion about this issue. It's time that we bring it out, because I mean, there has been time where I would tell my son in the car, I say, I feel like screaming. I just wanted to get outside and just scream. But I couldn't do that. They might think that I've lost it and I was crazy or something. So, I mean, I've been hurt and I just expressed my feelings. So they have to deal with it.
So they'll use a word that you feel you have overstanding in, just so you can use it to subject yourself to their jurisdiction.
And why did Liberia not feel offended by the United States' reaction towards them? What do the United States have on Liberia? Because in this most critical matter, Liberia did not even put up a fight for their diplomat, like other countries do. Case in point, the United States of America versus Devyani Khobragade.
One of India's top diplomats in the United States has been arrested on fraud charges and strip searched. And the whole thing has now escalated to the point where the Secretary of State is involved. But it's the way the police treated her when she was arrested that's really infuriated India.
This led to a major diplomatic standoff between India and the United States.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is scrambling to unravel a diplomatic crisis, calling India's national security advisor to, quote, express his regret over the strip search and treatment of an Indian diplomat by U.S. Marshals in New York. Kerry's call came just hours after the Indian government began removing concrete security barricades from in front of the U.S. Embassy here and stripping U.S. diplomats of their ID cards, moves apparently timed to retaliate for the diplomat's arrest.
Ms. Khobragade was not even a full consul general like Dr. Malachi Z. York.
This was very frustrating. It was unnecessary.
Innovation and Science Minister Navdeep Bains says he was racially targeted by security agents at a Detroit, Michigan airport last year.
Going through the security checkpoint, went through the metal detector, and then there was some challenges and issues with the swab machine. It didn't work the first time properly. I was asked to remove my turban. They did another test, and I was ultimately allowed to go through.
But after refusing to remove his turban and passing through security, Bains was again approached by officials at his gate and was asked to return to security because he had to remove his turban. It wasn't until security officials asked Bains for identification and he showed them his diplomatic passport that he was allowed to board his plane without having to take off his turban.
It speaks to discrimination, and discrimination happens with many people.
For Sikhs, wearing a turban is considered a sacred act that requires them to cover their hair in public. But it isn't the first time a Sikh man has been asked to remove his turban at an airport. Comedian Jasmeet Singh, better known to YouTubers as Just Rain, was forced to remove his turban at a San Francisco airport.
It's fully embarrassing, it's demoralizing, and it's something that I don't wish anybody should have to go through.
Canada's National Defence Minister has also found himself questioning actions of security officials.
Sometimes it just takes is asking them questions like about that I have to remove my turban. I'm like, no, you don't. And then they're saying, no, it's in regulations. And so normally what I question is, I said, please show me the regulations where it states that, right? And that's when they realize is, well, okay, wait a minute, you know a little bit more.
As for Minister Bains, Canadian officials at Foreign Affairs raised the issue with Americans. Eventually, they apologized for the incident. In Ottawa, Nigel Newlove, A City News.
The bond is so close, descendants of the pioneers, like restaurant owner Rosie Tolbert, were known as Americo-Liberians.
We look to America for everything, for fun, for clothes, for food, for vacation, for work. America was just an extension of our arm.
Rosie's great-grandfather came to Liberia from South Carolina in 1879 as a freed slave. Her uncle, William Tolbert, served as president of the country. He would be the last of a dynasty of Americo-Liberian leaders. Indigenous people resented what they called the ruling elite, and in 1980 rebelled in a bloody coup. President Tolbert was murdered. Rosie was 10. Her father, a businessman, became a target.
The government was saying you need to turn yourselves in or else we'll shoot to kill. Either you or any member of your family that we see.
Like thousands of other Liberians, Rosie's family escaped to America, where they lived as Liberia was ravaged by a series of tortuous civil wars. Rosie went to college and trained as a chef. But as comfortable as she was in the U.S., a visit to Africa made her think differently about her work.
I feel like I'm just doing the same thing every day and I'm not really making a big difference to anybody. But if I were to take that and bring it here, I would be able to do so much more.
So in this war-wrecked country where many still lack electricity and running water, Rosie opened a bakery, a catering business, and restaurant in what was once the family home. She now employs more than 50 Liberians in high-end food service jobs.
I wanted my staff to learn something different and to try to learn something that would help them, benefit them for the future, because if any other major corporation comes in here, not that I want them to leave me, but but if anybody else comes in, at least you have a skill.
So you're not just giving them jobs, you're training them for their next jobs.
Exactly. Exactly, and that's pretty much what I wanted to do because I felt that's a way of giving back.
That is precisely the drive that Liberia's president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, hopes will lure home more of the several thousand Liberians who now live in the United States. Liberians with the skills and education to rebuild their nation. To them, she says,
prepare to come home and join this team and join this reconstruction effort. Your country needs you.
She says her country also needs to find its own national identity, that after all those years of dependence on the U.S., it may be time to be less Americo and more Liberian.
Because over our history, we always felt we had this patron out there, you know, this big brother that if we ever ran into trouble, all we had to do was to cry, and Uncle Sam, our father, would come and save us. And
Uncle Sam with the same red, white, and blue, with a similar flag?
Those are some of the symbols that we also think will need to be changed. We'll have to find something that takes us back to a history before the settlers came. Our flag, our seal, all reflect really the dominance of the settler group. To get full unity, we have to deal with those historical symbols that have led to the division.
In doing so, however, they violate the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations and thus have set precedents to end diplomatic immunity. Anyone who studies case law knows that laws are established by the outcome of former cases.
Some federal agents, say that there was no mention of Liberia prior to 2004. This is an outright lie, because Liberia has been mentioned on court documents as far back as January 17, 2003, where Sheriff Howard Seals clearly stated that Dr. Malachi Z. York was going to Liberia.
Did you know that the Garland, Samuel, and Loeb legal firm made a written request to Jones County Jail for international prisoner transfer on behalf of Dr. Malachi Z. York on March 28, 2003? Now ask yourself, realistically, what U.S. citizen needs an international transfer?
Message! How can Dr. Malachi Z. York be a U.S. citizen and have his case be heard by ECOWAS? For those who don't know, ECOWAS stands for the Economic Community of West African States. It is a regional organization of 15 West African countries, established on the 28th of May, 1975. Therefore, you would have to be an African to have a case in ECOWAS. Message!
I'm not mad at America. America's mine. How can I be mad at it?
It is very clear that Liberia and the U.S. are working together in this most sensitive matter, and in doing so, they set a precedent to end diplomatic immunity.
Stand up for truth and justice, or fall with deception.
Liberians celebrate most everything American, including former U.S. President George W. Bush, who gave Liberia $2 billion in aid and debt relief. They even wrote him a song.
Thank you for debt relief. Just Bush, thank you.
But while Liberians are grateful for American help, this nation is now struggling to establish its own identity and move beyond its traditional ties.
So most Liberians feel that America and Liberia have this link. And to a large extent, most Liberians even feel that Liberia is, in a sense, part of America. And sometimes people say we are the stepchild of America.
You know what I'm saying? And we've been made psychologically to get mad at the country as if, you know what I'm saying, we're mad at the people. The country is not a people. The country is made up of people. And when we go back and start doing some research, we find out that the oldest faces found here are the Olmecs. and at the root of all Mac is El Melech.
So he's some kind of way affiliated with the Moors, with the Moors. Still not important to me because Ansar Allah doctrine is concrete. Mahdiism family link is concrete. I'm already in full power. You know what I'm saying? Again, I don't think this is of any use to me. So I get a tape from a fellow in New York called Hakeem Bey, a young fiery Moorish brother. And he's talking on it. I said, okay, he's talking about Moorish ascendancy. Again, it didn't appear to have anything to do with us. Then I got one by Dr. Blair, Delwood, and on the opening of it, Hakeem Bey is there again. He had his fez on, and he's proud of his crimson fez and how he must wear it, and we're all Moors, and I'm looking, this guy, and it starts to click, and he mentions the Empress, Mariachi. Correct, I say a tunic. I say, okay, she's from Nat Turner, she's from the Tunic tribe, and they're affiliated with the Washoe tribe. And I remember that Ben York had a Native American son by Asata Kawia, and his name was Washack. I said, Washa. And the women that they mentioned that the Frenchmen came over here and had sex with were from the Washoe women. So I hear Washa, Washack. Oh. I don't know now, still to this point, that Ben York is the half-brother to Anne Marie, who is the daughter of the great empress that Empress Mariachi is talking about. The Aya, Anna Maria. I didn't know that when she said, I am a descendant, meaning herself, from the great empress of the Washoe tribe. And she said, Ben York was a Washoe tribe.